Yo, good afternoon, folks. Frank the Pest Geek here. I was tagged in a group by a member on a question that was asked, and I'll read the question to you, and you guys can chime in on this. For those of you that have done it, very few people actually in this industry do lawn and ornamental, and I'll explain a couple of reasons why. My experience has been in lawn and ornamental for 18 years now. And for the longest time, it was 100% of my business for about the first 7 years. It wasn't until 2014, 10 years ago, that I added General Pest as a core business. And it wasn't until just recently this year that we added termite. So kind of I did it, I guess, ass backwards to the rest of the industry. But I'll read the question. Michael says, question, we are adding a lawn spraying, weeds, fertilization, aeration, insects, beginning in January to our core of termite, pest, I guess pest control, and mosquitoes. Some are recommending starting a separate LLC for that for different reasons. Has anyone had this experience? Any suggestion? Thanks. And Brian tagged me in the post, so I guess I'm going to chime in and give you my 2 cents of my 18 years of experience in lawn and ornamental. I'm going to go ahead and have an afternoon cigar today because I'm tired. It's Wednesday and it feels like a Friday with just the amount of work we've had. And we've been getting, and after this, I'm going to do this podcast somewhere like 4:30 in the afternoon here in Miami. I'm going to go see a customer. So I'm going to take about an hour to smoke a cigar, maybe 30, 40 minutes. Have an iced coffee because, I don't want to drink and go try to make a sale and talk to a customer. I'm barely coherent now as it is. Adding alcohol to the mix isn't going to help. But a little background. I started out originally as a lawn and ornamental technician. I spent 3 years doing exclusively that. And I had the idea of doing integrated pest management and organic lawn care and organic pest control. And I spent 7 years trying to make that happen. And what we ended up with was a hybrid of that. It couldn't be done completely. And many years ago, I did an entire podcast, go look for it, on the realities of doing lawn and ornamental. And my specialty is not lawn. My specialty actually is ornamentals and palm trees. So I because I'm in South Florida, understand, and I'll give you the differences and vast differences to the rest of the country. We got a lot of spammers here in this group on YouTube, posting all kinds of nonsense. I specialize in ornamentals because South Florida is heavy ornamental. I used to do more ornamental spraying and treatment with sometimes gardens with 20, 30 varieties of plants. And so I became an expert on ornamental plants and palm tree care. To the point when we had 2 epidemics down here with 2 new whiteflies, we were already way ahead of the entire industry on that in treatment and systemic treatments of using a neonicotinoid as root drench treatments and systemics. Lawn and ornamental for us here in Miami is at least 5 times harder, and it takes 10x longer to train on than GHP. I think it's harder than termite to do, quite honestly, and I'm doing termite now. From what I know, it's way harder to do ornamentals. Lawn is another thing, and I'll explain to you why. And the original question, should I do a separate brand? What I want you to look at is look at the industry, look at Orkin, Truly. A lot of these people sold off their entire lawn care division and got out of it completely. A lot of the big brands in lawn care were acquired and they were sold. Lawn care is extremely hard for a company that specializes in termite and roaches and ants, and they're dealing with fear of pests, where lawn and ornamental has to be sold. And lawn and ornamental has to be sold as a luxury item because it is. It's bought purely by people who have basically FU money to waste on wanting their lawn really beautiful. And if you're in I lived in Ohio for years, for about 8 years, and I saw people go fanatical about their lawns. You have to do overseeding. It's completely different in South Florida. You have to do overseeding. You have to lay straw down. You have to prep it for waking it up for the season. It is a completely different mindset of people that buy lawn and ornamental. And I have a mosquito out here. Jesus. I might have to put up my fan on to get rid of it. So when somebody who has done termite and has done pest and has done mosquito, which is mostly fear pest, people are afraid their house is going to fall on them. People are afraid of roaches. People are mosquito is another one that is sold to people with a lot of discretionary money because people want to enjoy their backyard. It's sold as an enjoyment product. If you try to sell mosquito on the basis of fear mongering, on Zika, and all of the diseases that can be transmitted by mosquitoes, you're failed, because it has to be sold as a luxury item, as a pleasure item of enjoying your backyard. People who enjoy their backyard thoroughly. People like me who sit out here, want to sit out at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, where there's peak mosquito biting time, turn on my grill, grab a drink, sit out here with my wife who is extremely allergic to mosquitoes. And we have to install a thermocell system because it has to be on demand because she wants to sit out here in peak biting time. And she made the mistake this week of me not turning it on, sitting out here waiting for me before I turned it on, and she got clobbered by at least 9 mosquito bites. She's that, and then she spends the whole night just scratching, and we have to put her on Benadryl, and it's been as much as putting her on sometimes antibiotics because she's so allergic to it. She gets a thing called dermatitis, I think, that is called. And so when we talk about ornamentals and lawn, if you have a division of people that cannot sell beauty, cannot sell luxury services, cannot sell, and they have to switch between selling what they know to sell and now selling a luxury item, which is what it is. I mean, right now, I'm at $24 per 1,000 for our complete lawn care program. If you have a 10,000 square foot yard, that's $240 a month. I got to sell my butt off to convince you that we're the best at keeping that lawn beautiful. That we're going to deal with, the AC turned off. I didn't realize. Let me make sure I turn off my AC so it doesn't turn on. That noise was atrocious. I just get used to it. And then I realize, let me just make that a little hotter there inside. Nobody's home except my son. He's not going to mind right now. And when you're dealing with the training that it takes, the training is probably not as hard as training a termite tech. In that case, if you're doing ornamentals, it is. If you're in South Florida, think about this, folks. You got to deal with a grass species, right? So most of the time, you've got one cultivar that is the predominant cultivar. For us down here, the cultivar is St. Augustine lawn. You know, Kentucky bluegrass, if you're up in the north, Midwest, you know, Bermuda in somewhere out in maybe the Carolinas. Doing Bermuda down here is you have to be there. If you have Bermuda, you got Soysha, you got to be there on that lawn twice a month. You're going to do 13 to 16 applications a year of fungicide. What most companies do and what we do differently is that most companies will send a tech out with one tank mix, right? It'll include an insecticide. This is going to make a lot of you guys in GHP gasp of what you have to do to get those lawn, how chemical intense the lawn care industry is, and why when you look at the stats on NPMA or the national stats from any company, lawn care is not even included in the stats of how much money that makes. Lawn care is in a separate total category by itself. Mostly in the landscaping business and the lawn care business. If you look at lawn care magazines, GHP and lawn care are not even close of how chemical intense is, to the point that you've got a 13% between fertilizer and chemical cost a year. It is extremely expensive to operate. You got to watch those chemicals like a hawk, or some tech will use it up, and you'll end up in a 20% chemical program. So chemical management compared to GHP is really hard, because we use IPM, so we use discretion when we apply chemicals. Let me end this real quick. Let me make a note here, because I got wifey calling me, but I gotta see what's going on. Hold on a second. Yes.
I need to focus on one part of my phone.
Okay, do the other part and give me a bit.
No, that's the last one.
All right, I'll help you when I'm done. I'll help you with that. Thanks, Bobby. And you think about this, you got to mix what they do is they mix an insecticide, a fungicide, 1, 2, or 3 weed control products, a sedge control product, surfactant, a soil amendment, some type of fertilizer. You can mix 7 products in a tank. It is water intense like a water hog. If you're going to do the industry standard of 3 to 5 gallons per 1,000 square feet, and you got a 10,000 square foot property that you're spraying, that's 30 gallons right there. You got to walk around with a 600 gallon tank and 2 drop tanks, a 50 and 150 gallon drop tank. You got to have 2 to 3 reels with separate. You got to have, and now you're entering into the knowledge. The technician has to learn what disease that lawn has. A lawn in South Florida can have 7 different diseases. St. Augustine alone. You've got all of the insects that you're going to deal with. You've got all the weeds, whether that's a weed or a sedge that you're dealing with. You've got to deal with the cut. Is the landscaper screwing up your cut? Down here, notorious for scalping, not sharpening blades. I got customers that will come and complain to me how ugly their lawn is and how bad it looks. And what they think they're going to do is they're going to transfer that responsibility over to us to make it look pretty, when they got a disaster of in other words, if this was a court of law and there would be a court let me turn on, give me a second, folks. Let me turn on my fan. I'm getting some mosquitoes. That are killing me right now, and I got to hook up my misting system again. I had to take it off because we had to do the awning repair and all that. So they want to transfer the responsibility of their lawn looking good when they have a bad landscaper. You have to have irrigation systems that are spot on. Because people who buy lawn care understand they want that golf care. The illusion that you got to sell is the golf looking lawn that's going to look beautiful, immaculate, perfect. You're going to walk on it and it's going to feel, like a rug underneath your feet. And you got to sell your butt off. And when I just had to fire a client, let's have a $320 a month client, had to fire him. I've had him for 2 years. And I told them originally when they moved into that house, brand new construction, they got trees all over. There's shade everywhere. St. Augustine can't handle shade. It needs 8 hours. So their soil is compacted. They hold a ton of water. The lawn literally is rotting by the roots. And on top of that, they want their kids to be able to play and practice soccer on that lawn every day, every afternoon. And St. Augustine lawn can't be trampled on. That's just a fact. It's not designed. It's not turf to play on. And he wouldn't understand it. This is a high power guy making millions of dollars. Says, you're passing the buck and you're trying to pass the buck. And I said, my landscaper says he could make this thing beautiful. And I said, I called him on his bluff and I said, have your landscaper do it. And I know his landscaper will not be able to do it. Will not be able to do that. So I let him go. And that's a reality that we got to face when we're doing lawn care. And if you have the biggest problems I've seen in lawn care, okay, with companies that will talk about the cons of companies that do termite and GHP, is that sooner or later the lawn care technician realizes he can make more money with less work doing GHP or doing less work, because he's got to be out there pulling a hose 10, 15 times a day on a property. I mean, you can't have an older person like you can with GHP, where they're used to removing webs, spraying perimeters, now running around in $150,000 to $190,000 truck, making sure that he realizes he's not a spray technician, that he is a lawn enhancement, lawn beautification technician, and his job is to make sure that lawn looks beautiful. Unlike where as long as you don't have any ants and you don't have any roaches, nobody complains. The moment you have a spot on the lawn, people are calling the office. And we got to be like, our thing is, if we show up to a lawn, one of our strategies has been that we don't have callbacks, because the technician is proactive in spotting the problem, because we do monthly and bi-monthly only. We don't do quarterly. Why? Because every customer that I get is from a large brand that has a quarterly, and there's no way in South Florida that you're going to be able to deal with diseases on a quarterly basis. I mean, diseases are basically driven by happenstance. It rained too much. The temperatures creep too high. Diseases are triggered. The fungus, they're soil-borne diseases that are there permanently, and you can't eradicate them. You only manage them in the true sense. So when it gets too cold, we have one type of disease. When it gets really, really, really hot, we have another type of disease. And in between, we have other diseases depending on what's going on that lawn. We got a hurricane coming through. All of a sudden, take all root rot within 2 weeks of that hurricane coming through was on 15 of our properties that we had to fly over there. Because we noticed it and said, if we're getting it on one, we're getting it on more. Let's go take a look. So, when you got to hire a tech, when your costs are higher, the only way that you can mitigate the cost of the higher expense, because the technician is going to be, like most companies, paid on production, right? But your cost in the product is so much higher, and the amount of customers you can serve in a day is different than with GHP. You try to load up 20 lawns on a guy, he's gonna die when it's 104 degrees out there, and he's spending 30, 40 minutes on a property outside versus the average GHP technician that spends 18 to 19 minutes on a property, on an exterior audit. If he's inside, it's different, right? So you're paying $18 to $20 for a lawn tech that has to know 5X, or you're paying him a production, but you can't pay him 20, 25% production, especially if you're out, let's say in Alabama, in rural Alabama. You're not going to sell lawn care in rural Alabama. I've had companies that told me, I'm going to do it, Frank, teach me. I want to do it. And you made it sound so difficult. And then they got in and 2 years later, hell no, we don't want to do this anymore. What about liability? Do you want 100% of your company being complaints constantly because of something the tech did wrong? The moment that lawn looks bad, the tech did it. The moment the lawn gets burned, the tech burned it. The moment that it has a spot on it, why didn't the tech see it? So our policy has been, if we go to a lawn, we do monthly. If you want disease management, you have to go monthly. This is FU money town where I'm selling you $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 a month programs for our clients. The idea, I got a guy who told me, I did a consultation for him today. I charge $159 to do a lawn consultation. He had a large major brand, and basically the lawn looks like crap. I consulted on him. I said, look, the reality is your lawn is never going to look beautiful by you hiring or switching a lawn company. Your soil is compacted. You're sandwiched between two houses with pitch roofs. You've got 15 to 20 feet. When it rains 4 inches, you've got 20 feet of water here. Your property doesn't drain. It's compacted. I stuck my finger in the soil. It hasn't rained in over a week. And this thing was like clay mud, me picking it up. There's moss everywhere on the lawn, all over. And he has the irrigation off. I said, the solution here is going to be for you to come and excavate this completely. Take it down to the grade. Because what's happened year over year is landscapers here, instead of removing the sod or cutting the sod off or killing it completely with Roundup, burning it, and then removing it and taking away that compacted soil, they will just lay more sod on top when it dies, and that's what he's done. And instead of coming in every year and doing adding sand to this so that it builds it up so it drains, they just keep adding this, and now you've got 3 to 4 to 5 layers of lawn that's been set on top of each other, and now this thing will never drain. So I said, this thing is impossible. You're never going to have a nice lawn. My suggestion is you put artificial lawn back here in your yard, or you go ahead. He's got the pool right there, draining water from the pool right onto the lawn to the mid area where it's like a canal. You're never going to win. So why did that lawn care company not know when they're doing, they say, we do free lawn inspections. If you're doing a free lawn inspection, you've got to be a salesman. And you're going to send out a salesman, and he's got to sell or he doesn't eat that day, and he's got to get a contract. And basically, I do a ton of videos where I show people, you're never going to have a beautiful lawn unless you fix this. And go look at my Nature Pest channel, where I do consultations, and I publish the consultations where the client has had 2, 3, 4, 5 lawn care companies, and nobody can solve it. Now, I'm not saying this is the case nationwide. It's different in California. It's different in New York. It's seasonal, depending on where you're at. It's going to be like you're totally doing nothing of lawn care in the winter. So if you got a lawn care company, you're only making money 4 or 5 months out of the year. You're done the rest of the time. You got to sell super premium to have a lawn care company in the Northeast. Versus here, the problems are year round. There's no breaks. It gets too cold, we get disease. We get chinch bug rarely, but I get chinch bug problems with bad irrigation systems. I walk by, the irrigation isn't hitting that area. It's dry, it's near a sidewalk. The customer now needs to fix the irrigation system. So understand all of these issues. Go talk to, if you want to know what lawn is really like, and you think I'm exaggerating, go where you live, okay, and go talk to a superintendent at a golf course and talk to him about it and see what he tells you. You see, so, and I had a guy like in rural Alabama sell it. He says, "No, we're going to make so much money." And 2 years into this project, he's like, "Bro, I want out of this so bad. It's not even funny. It's a totally different discipline." It's so hot out here. My cup is sweating. I don't want to get the water on me. So would I do a separate brand? If I were starting up today and I wanted to focus really heavily on lawn care, and I was only doing lawn care, I would start a separate brand because I don't want to muddy my other brand with the quality we deliver, because you can't, it's a totally different game. It's like saying I'm a baseball player and you want to be Bo Jackson. Not everybody can transition. Not everybody can go to baseball to basketball, or basketball to baseball, and then go back and play basketball. That's kind of the same equivalent. Not a lot of people can do that. What I learned down here, and I seen the companies that started as lawn care companies in Tampa, Orlando, years later, they're having to do general pest because it isn't enough. It's a very tough business to be in. I only know of one down here that kept it mostly, and they started buying out GHP and started doing GHP. I know of another one that was a tree company that went into lawn care and had to get into GHP. Because it's very tough to compete when you're competing with national brands doing $49 a month lawns, treating them quarterly, and the technician is showing up saying your lawn was treated for disease and it's full of weeds. And they're not killing my weeds. They're not doing it. Why? Because you can't load up 15, 20 stops, sell $159 a quarter lawn with 3x, 4x, 5x the cost of chemical that GHP has. When GHP is between 1.5 and 3% of chemical, you're at 6 to 9% easily. Add fertilizer to that, you're at 15% cost of goods. Your cost on a truck compared to a $38,000, $40,000 truck, you're now at a $150,000 truck. That's giving you, depending on if you buy a diesel bed, you got to buy a diesel. And now you've got this 16, 24-foot truck that you're handing over to a tech. It's a lot harder. It's a lot of things to consider when going into lawn, that you're going to need a technician that has to change his mind frame. He comes to a lawn and he says, "But I sprayed it." And the customer is, "You buffoon. That lawn looks like crap." Because you sprayed it doesn't mean you controlled the problem. It doesn't mean it looks pretty. So you can't have that mentality of spray and pray with lawns. You got to have a mentality that we're here to make sure that lawn looks beautiful. And when that lawn doesn't look beautiful, we got to run and make it right. Because unlike ants, a lawn spot that dies isn't going to grow back overnight. And that customer has to sit out of his window every day. And for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month, 3 months, has to look at that bare spot when he hired you to make sure that didn't happen. So it's about aesthetics 100%. And what I've learned is that most technicians that do lawn will transfer to GHP sooner or later, want to do it or want to get out of the industry. They'll last 1 season, 2 seasons if they're lucky. Because think about how hard it is to hire right now people that can just do perimeter treatment, remove webs, place stations, and maintain them. And you can't find people that want to work. Now you're going to tell somebody you're going to work outside in the heat all day long with no breaks from that heat. You're not going to go inside a house. You've got to learn all of this, diseases, and you've got to be literally a horticulturist. You got to love it. Lawn care, really, the companies that do well have a passion for selling beauty. They got a passion for pulling it off. The reason we've been successful at it and why I charge 2, 3, 4 times more than everybody else is because we can prove our results. When you look at our lawn across the street, like I can't take on a client that I know for a fact that lawn is never going to look beautiful because the landscaper is an idiot, because they're not going to fix the irrigation, because they have leveling issues, because they have grade issues. I will have to turn that client down every single time because he's looking at the neighbor across the street, but that landscaper is there weekly or he's mowing it himself weekly. Most people here in South Florida have a landscaper. They don't have anything at all. They mow their own weeds every week. So those are the, from apart from the liability of the brand, the taxes I can't attest to. Right now we're 50% lawn, 50% GHB with 2 routes. If I had to do it over again, I would have focused on GHB, and I would have had a 80-20 rule where it would have only been liability of 20%. So if I had 1 lawn truck, I would have 5 GHP trucks on the road, limited to 20% on the market. Doing the same with termite now, looking at the liability, saying I only want about 20% of my clients to be termite issues. And then maybe 20% lawn, and then 60% GHB. So that's my 2 cents on it, folks, of doing this, selling lawns for the last 18 years to millionaires and multimillionaires and billionaires who can want it, can afford it, and have extra money and could care less what it costs, as long as they got a beautiful lot. I got people on $10 million estates that were paying $320 a month. And they thought they were getting ripped off by their lawn care guy because he was charging them, for treating 20,000 square feet, $300 a month. And I come in and I said, bro, you need to sit down and for this because I'm going to be $1,500 a month to take care of all these plants that you have. And that's what we do. I don't bat an eyelash when I quote my price on anything. To me, it doesn't matter. I'm totally emotionless when I'm quoting my price to somebody that that we're paying $300 and we're coming in at $1,500, $15,000 a year when they were paying $4,000. Because we give the results and we keep those customers. Because the reality is the market has a tendency to undersell itself because what they do is just send a tank out with 5 products in a tank, spray everything. That's how I was trained. And why I quit doing that, because I couldn't get the results for the clients, mixing 5 tanks, spraying everybody with everything. And then hoping to get a result. I don't know what else to tell you, other than have you really done your homework if you want to get into lawn care? Do your homework first. Make sure if you're the reasons I would start a separate brand, if I had the money to start over again and start a separate brand, is because the mindset has to be completely different. You can't train one way your GHP techs and put everybody into a meeting and try to train. You would have to have a separate division with separate managers, separate salespeople, separate everything, and then the guy who can sell lawn care can sell ice cream to an Eskimo. He can sell ice to an Eskimo, And so if he can sell lawn, he can sell termite very easily. He can sell GHP, not vice versa. The guy who sells on fear and the guy who sells on urgency, most of the time, people that bought lawn care have been buying. They know what they want. If you're going to compete with your competition in the market of selling the price and selling on price, and now you have to hire minimum wage technicians that have to bust their ass basically to make you rich and to deal with rich clients to make their lawn pretty, and they're taking home the same amount of money as a GHP tech or less, it's going to turn on you. And I've seen it 100 times. The guy says, screw that. I'm going to go do ants. I'm not doing this because, unless you're making $70,000 a year, it gets around really quick. I don't know how else to explain that to people. I've had that and then realize that people will. This is the reason why lawn care also has a higher turnover than GHP. So if you think you have a problem with turnover and hiring people for GHP and much harder for termite, think about how much harder it's going to be to hire for lawn. I can't find a lawn care guy right now to save my life. I got to be out on a truck doing it because I've interviewed 3 people in the last 2 weeks, none of which will ever qualify to do lawn. They're too old. They can't hit it out there on with that heat when it gets to 105 and 100% humidity. To be out on a property like I was this Friday, where I treated 250,000 square feet in one day, and I was beat the next day. I mean, I was beat. When we do 6 acres of property that's commercial, HOAs, where it's condos, and it takes 8 hours to 10 hours to treat that property, where we've got HOAs that take 2 days to do when we go do it. Yeah, we make a ton of money on those properties, but you got a guy that needs to walk acres and acres of looking at weeds, and one weed starts looking like an X. To the point where if you got a new guy, you're going to have to use dye to train him because there's no way he can see all those problems. And being able to look at something and say, that's anthracnose disease. That is take all root rot. That's large patch disease. That's small patch disease. You know, then you look at a plant, and what does the plant have? How many fungicides? I mean, for lawn care, we carry 17 products. We have to carry 2 fungicides, 2 insecticides. We got to carry 4 different weed control products to control a lot, because you can't use the same product when it's really heavy summer and you got to spray an entire lawn. And I've got weeds that can only treat with 2,4-D. Do you want people handling 2,4-D? Sometimes that's the only way to do it. You can't handle it any other way. For years, we didn't have to use 2,4-D for about 16 years. And 3 years ago, we had to start using 2,4-D on some properties. And these 2 weeds that cannot be controlled with Celsius or MSM, and then you need certainty because you got sedges. And do you mix one product and say, Jesus, we got to waste all those products? The cost is like $3 to $4 per 1,000 square feet when you're spraying a lawn with bifenthrin, and it's $1, $1 a 1,000 square feet to spray a lawn. It's a whole different mindset, folks, that you have to get into to accept. And a lot of people can't accept that. And that's why I tell people, look, like I said, you might want to do a separate brand. I would definitely do a separate brand. But now you have to have the money to brand it. You got to have, basically you own 2 companies. In Florida, you would need 2 certified operators. If your certified operator quits, you got to hire another one, because you can't operate a business without a certified operator. So what people do in Florida is they do have one company because of that. Because if you have a cert operator in all categories, you can do it. But usually the owner, like me, is the certified operator. And I have all the certs. I can't quit. I got the lawn cert, the termite cert, the GHP cert, and the fertilizer, because now you need a fertilizer license in Florida in order to be able to, and you actually need a fertilizer license with a certificate. So everybody that handles fertilizer needs to be licensed and certified in Florida. You've got water issues. You're in a lake, you're spraying a lakefront home, fishes turn up dead. It had to be the lawn guy. Those are things that are a reality that you got to be concerned with. Like I said, it depends where you're at. It depends what state you're in. As far as tax liabilities, man, you need to consult your accountant on that. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I can just tell you what I've been through, where I sit here. How much longer do I want to do this? I was sitting there and talking to my wife, and I said, I don't want to take on any more lawn customers. I think I'm done. That lawn care division, it's done. I just want to focus on GHP and termite now, and just focus on getting residential clients. I don't even want to do apartments. We used to be 30% of our business used to be single renter, single owner condo apartments for roach service, because landlords and HOAs and 50% of this market is rental. Again, every market has its own problems. Every market has its own unique peculiarities. Every market is completely different. You can't paint anything with a broad brush. I'm an expert on what I do here in South Florida. I'm not an expert in North Florida. North Florida is a different country than South Florida. It's not even a state. It's a different country. Central Florida. The things that you can do in Central Florida, we have here, to give you an example, we are neotropical, meaning we have literally rainforest conditions here in South Florida. We have monsoon type conditions here in South Florida. North Florida knows nothing about that. Central Florida knows nothing about that. We have our own climate zone here in South Florida. I think we're going from 10B to 11B here in South Florida, where North Florida can go into 8 USDA climate zones. What you can grow in North Florida, you can't grow in South Florida. What you can grow in Central Florida, a lot of the times you cannot grow in South Florida. It's like almost a different country down here. So when people say, man, the reason I know much more than the average bear is because I have to do so much more than the average bear when we're down here. There's very few companies down here that are complete. Much less would even claim to be holistic, eco-friendly, and do it. We are strictly IPM. When a customer tells me, and I got to look at a lawn that I know I'm going to spray 13, 14 times a year with a fungicide, because the customer is not going to rein in the landscaper, when he's not going to fix a ton of problems, I walk away. Simply turn it down, walk away, because we know we're not going to be able to make that customer happy. And reality is that we are in the customer satisfaction business. When it comes to lawn, it's about making people happy. My average customer travels all over the country. When he gets home on a week or a weekday, he wants to be able to sit out there, smoke a cigar like this, and say, man, do I have a beautiful lawn. And he didn't do crap on that lawn. Unlike the average homeowner that can't afford lawn care, that has to mow his own lawn, treat it, fertilize it, all that. This is bought with 100% FU money. It is, you got to have a $250,000 a year plus. I got people that make $250,000 a year. They cannot afford us because they're house poor. They're living in houses, driving cars. They can't afford trying to keep up appearances. And with lawn, you have to have a nice lawn or it goes to crap. And what I found is people don't cancel their lawn care with us. People will cancel their GHP. People will cancel that condo contract in a heartbeat. The reason we stay with lawn, and for us, is because nobody cancels that lawn care. Especially when the average owner has already gone to 3, 4, 5 companies who sent out a technician that was still wet behind the ears and couldn't tell the difference, between a broadleaf weed and a grass. He couldn't tell that owner, it has this and it has that, and he has no clue. Because they hire a kid, and it is a kid usually, 20-something, they give them 2 days of training and they throw them on a route because that's the reality. We can't find warm bodies. If you got 1 or 2 technicians, you can probably, I have to spend 10x. We have to go through an entire year, folks. Think about this. In order for me to train a technician to do lawn and ornamental, it takes a year. My average GHP technician can be up and running doing maintenance and doing 80% of the work like that in 5 days. The lawn care technician has to go through all the seasons, see all the diseases, know what diseases are soil-borne in that house that are prevalent to know it. Luckily, we have good records, but until I show him on that lawn what that looks like, you can't do it, guys, from pictures. You can't do it from video training. You can't do it with online training. You can teach the biology online, You can't teach what that's supposed to look like. It's a craft. It's an art form. Lawn care is both a science and an art. You know, you can't just say that we've got lawn care down to a science, because it requires the eye of a trained technician to look at a lawn. I can walk by a neighborhood and I can tell what the problems are on that lawn without even having to stop. That's from 18 years of doing the same damn thing over and over again. I can sit there and say to a technician, look, you're going to have to be patient, because they want to know everything about it. That I can't prep you for what you're going to see. What you're going to see in June on a lawn, that no problems, all of a sudden December comes around and all hell breaks loose. We get a rainy, cold December, we're screwed. It's balls to the wall, run around, putting out fires all the time. We're firefighters. The reason we don't have the callbacks is because if the technician is on there and he treats the lawn with a fungicide, he's back out there in 14 days confirming it works. We got to give it 14 days. Why? Because there's no fungicide that anybody's going to test that's going to tell me that in a calcareous soil with a pH of 8 to 8.5, that fungicide is going to last 30 days. Bullshit. We've been able to prove it won't. 14 days max, you got to be back out there and hope that you have the right dosage. The biggest mistake I see in lawn and ornamental in South Florida, I'm blue to the face of trying to teach this at every seminar that I do, is the fact that you send out a guy with an F-250 with one tank, you fill it up with 3 products, and then you spray the shrubs and the lawn with the same rate. And you got to use shrub rate, because it's illegal to spray a shrub with a lawn rate, because you'll violate the label. You need 2 tanks, you need 3 tanks to deal with that. And they'll send 1 tank and they're spraying everybody with the same thing with a low dosage. They're getting a resistance problem in a couple of years, wondering why they're not controlling the problem. Is because you're using a shrub fungicide rate for a lawn when it's 3x, 4x the amount of fungicide that needs to apply to that lawn to deal with that problem. And we make a custom application on every single lawn. This is why we're so expensive, because you can't just run around with a tank full. I got a customer that stopped me the other day. He says, bro, you know, I've owned homes since I'm in my 18, since I was 18. And he's 65 now, he's retired. I said, you guys are the far best I've seen to do this, because why? Because we show up to a lawn, that lawn has a disease, we're going to custom mix a fungicide on that lawn. We're only going to apply a insecticide several times a year when we know the bug problem exists, when we know the seasonality of the bug problem. We're going to treat for weeds, spot treat only, but we're looking at it constantly. That's our secret. It is a customized lawn care program for every client. I have clients that I never have to apply a fungicide on that lawn because it's IPM principles. We don't apply a product if the problem doesn't exist, but how do you prevent the problem? The only way you can know is by knowing. You have to be an expert of knowing. You show up to a house, because usually, here's a tip, folks. Customer calls with a change bug problem. Guess what problem is in that neighborhood? Change bugs. If a customer calls with a disease problem, guess what's going to happen next year at the same time? The disease. Why is the disease happening? Usually because they're irrigating way more than they need to. Like every day, every other day, because the landscaper told them. Landscapers in this industry have about as much training as witch doctors, because they buy equipment one day, they're out working the next, they have no knowledge of horticulture, no knowledge of that cultivar, giving advice to customers on how they should do things. And then I show up and I said, your landscaper doesn't know his hand from his ass. And here's why. Boom, 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 boom. Unless you can fix your landscaper and tell him to stop messing with my water, because next time if you hire me and that landscaper touches my water, I'm sending Vito, the thick-necked guy, to go find him and break his hands. I literally put signs in my irrigation boxes, do not touch the irrigation under any circumstances. I tell the client, he changes that irrigation, you change that irrigation, and I will fire you. Because I can't give you what you want by everybody sabotaging my program and everybody wanting to be an expert. I don't care what that blog says. 17 years of experience. Look at that lawn across the street. The reason you hired me is because his lawn looks great. Why does your lawn look like crap in the same neighborhood and that looks great? That's my calling card. When I put a lawn stake on that lawn, I'm certifying that we know what the hell we're doing. And I won't do it unless I know that we can give that result, because that's my brand, that's my name, that's my image, that's my calling card. And nobody's going to screw with that, or I will find you and I will hunt you down, and I will kill you. That's kind of my attitude. And I talked about this in conferences that I do here. I do training at the extension service. And I said, you can't tell customers that. I said, I tell customers that every day. Why? Because I can look you in the eye. I'm authoritative. I have the authority. I have the experience. I have the knowledge. And I said, if you want me to give you what you want, you have to give me what I want. And that's what I've been doing, folks, for the last 8 years. And this is why the average guy that gets into lawn care will fail. The average lawn that gets, he'll leave. He'll say, I don't want to do it. I tried it. That's a nightmare. I'm out. Buy me out, buy my route, buy my business, whatever you want, but I'm out of this. So it's 5 o'clock. I got a 6 o'clock appointment. I hope this helps, folks. I'm being as honest and as transparent as I can. Some of the guys in this industry that know what I do will attest to it. I get a call literally once a week from some operator somewhere that's telling me, look at this lawn, bro, and tell me what it has. And I say, it has this. And I'll tell you what, that guy's irrigating every day. Did you go to the irrigation box? Did you turn it on? Did you see it? Yeah, it's on every day. But the customer says the landscaper told him, and he's not going to change it. Then tell the customer, you're not my customer, and walk away from that. Because you're never going to make that guy happy with two people being a two-headed monster. You can't have two heads running an operation. You have a two-headed monster, and that will never work. And literally, I will tell him, tell the owner he needs to water. No, the landscaper told him every day. My Mexican landscaper told me every day. And that's what he does. So I said, well, you got two choices. Drop the customer, or tell the customer what he needs to hear, or drop him. Are you going to go back every time he complains about the same thing over and over and over and again, expecting a different result? That's the definition of insanity. It's asinine. You've got to be able to confront that. And people won't. And they're like, no, you're right, but I can't tell that. Because here's what happened, folks. And I'm dealing with this right now with my text. And I'm going to be on for probably 7 more minutes, and I'm going to call it quits. Lean into me and listen to me. The average pest control technician in America that is turned into an owner jumped off a truck from being a technician, and he was forced into ownership. What I find time after time after time after time, when I've done assessments on technicians and on owners, the fact that the technician has low self-esteem. He cannot look at a power person who is a millionaire, look him in the eye and say, Mr. Customer, you are wrong. Here's the facts. And you either going to trust me to do this and be the expert here, or you're going to end up doing this yourself. Or you're going to keep failing and wishing you had me. My technician cannot look at somebody in the eye and he says, so what I tell him is, here's what I tell him. I said, tell him the next time he comes to you with that crap, tell him Frank said. And that will end all arguments, because now he knows that I warned you about the conversation I've been having with him over and over, that he keeps challenging me on. Frank said, Frank said, Frank said. The reason I get my customers is because I have 700 plus YouTube videos on every problem. And I'm the expert. And when you come to me, you got to realize two things. I am the expert on this property, not you, not your landscaper, not your designer. I have people who don't know how to design. They design on color. And I have the argument that says, what are you going to do with this species that is in full sun now when it's a full shade plant? What are you going to do with that, Mr. Designer? And they call me out to tell your designer that he either has to remove that plant or put something else there, but that's never going to look pretty. I just had a client, $4.5 million home on Miami Beach with 5 plants getting eaten by slug and snail. I told them, I said, I looked at your property overhead. You don't stand a chance in hell at controlling that because that's a weekly service. Unless you've got $400 a month to treat snail only, and it's questionable how much I'm going to be able to do because you're completely covered. You're completely covered in shade. There's absolutely no sunlight coming in. It's wet all the time, and slug and snail is going to flourish on that property. There's nobody in hell that's going to solve that problem for you. I told him flat out. I said, if you want, I'm telling you I can't do it. I can tell you what product to buy. You do it yourself. He's not going to do it. $4 million home. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on 10,000 square feet of land in Miami Beach. That guy's not going to do it himself. So I said, you want me to go over there? Fine. Here's my fee for giving you a consultation because you're going to waste my time. I don't stand a chance in hell of selling you anything that I'm going to be able to pull off. And I can't help you. But if you want, I'll go over there. I just had a conversation with a guy on Miami Beach that his ficus are trashed. And I said, here's the reality. Unless you've got a $600 a month budget, you got a 60% chance of defoliation. My best advice is find a chainsaw. Now, that's going to cost him about $150,000 to replace all those plants. You got F you money. That's what I'm talking about, folks. You want to get into this business, go after the people who have the money. But here's the thing. You have to become a salesman that learns how to sell Bentleys and Brentleys. If you don't, you want to be a company that's running around with $150,000 trucks spraying everybody with one chemical and hoping you get results. You better have some serious experts that can go on there and fix the problem when your technician screws up. This is Frank, the Service Geek, wishing